Hey everybody, this is Roberto Blake of RobertoBlake.com helping you create something awesome today. So today's Monday, and since it's a graphic design video today and I happen to still be in New York, I decided to do a little video about my time in New York working as a graphic designer at an ad agency. And I just want to tell you guys what working at an ad agency is really like and what you can expect if that's the kind of job that you want to do. I think for me that working at an ad agency in New York was simultaneously one of the best and worst experiences of my entire career. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Let's start with the positive and upsides of working at an ad agency. For one thing, I got a tremendous amount of experience working at the ad agency, and I got to work on some of the coolest projects that I've ever done, and I did some of my best work there. I got to learn from more experienced people, I got to learn a lot about the industry, and I got to work with tremendous and amazing clients, including doing work that was like billboards for HBO in Times Square, and book covers for Random House for Stephen Hawking. These are experiences and highlights of my career that I don't think I could have gotten any other way. There is no substitute for real-world experience and from learning under people who have been in their craft for over a decade. There just really isn't. I obviously learned things that I don't think I could have even come close to learning, or rather that I didn't come close to learning when I was in college for graphic design. And even working as an in-house designer at a corporate company, there were just a lot of very subtle things that are completely different about working as a designer or really doing any job at an ad agency. Ad agencies have their own culture. Every workplace has their own culture, but the world of advertising from an agency perspective is very, very different because you're working in what is called a B2B environment, a business-to-business environment, instead of working directly with the end consumer in mind. You have to really deal with the internal politics of a whole other company entity and its culture and its internal mechanics in addition to the corporate culture that you have at the company you're working for. So it's actually a very unique experience by itself. Obviously, that comes with some downsides. This won't be true at every place that you work. In my particular case, there were some personalities and some policies that I just really did not enjoy and did not agree with, but it wasn't all bad. And there's no real situation most of the time that's going to be wholly good or wholly bad. But one of the important things I would say is that when you go to work somewhere, make sure that you talk to people who have worked there in the past, not just people who are working there now, who are, potentially afraid that you might, something might get back to them or you might go talking to somebody or they don't know who you're connected to, but find former employees that are willing to give you information and an honest opinion of the people who work there and what the work culture and what the work experience will be like, because it makes a real huge difference. One of the other things I will say is make sure that you have an understanding of what the job actually entails and what it involves so that you have the right expectations going in. Because if you don't, that could get overwhelming very quickly. Advertising is very different than your experience in college. It's very different than your experience even working as an in-house designer. The deadlines are very tight. There's a lot of pressure. It could be something that causes you a ton of anxiety. And so if you're not mentally and emotionally prepared and equipped for that, it could go very bad for you. That was part of what my experience was a little bit. I grew as a result of it. I did get a much thicker skin. I didn't have much of a choice. But it was very hard on me initially for those reasons. A lot of people are worried that their talent or their creative ability isn't going to be up to snuff. And the thing is, when you work with great art directors, that's not really the case. They work within the abilities that you have, and more than anything, a lot of times they might pick your brain for ideas or they might want you to be part of a brainstorming session, but at least initially, mostly you're going to still be a pair of hands when you're working within an agency until you prove yourself, so you won't have to worry about that. And then even in terms of concepts, the clients are going to have their input, so the technical details, your craftsman and craftsmanship, that's going to actually be the real vital thing. So having all of those things solid is actually going to be more important than your artistic ability and your creative range at the start. But later, that will become very important as you try to work your way up and as you try to prove yourself in the industry and as you try to really earn the right to call some of your own shots. One of my personal strengths, and this may not be for everybody, was the fact that I was really good at the pitch part of working at an agency. I was very good at meetings. I was very good at relating to the clients, empathizing, asking very intelligent questions, and I was, very tech savvy, so it meant that the things that they were wanting to do at the time that they were a little intimidated by, I was able to help them feel very comfortable, and that makes more of a difference than you might imagine. Your communication skills, your ability to empathize with people, make them feel comfortable, and to be able to present your ideas in a clear and concise way, huge, overwhelming strength when it comes to working in advertising, especially from a design perspective. And you'd be surprised how many non-creative people you're really going to have to work with at the agency level, both in terms of the client side and even within the organization. So being able to present and communicate your ideas and being able to actually be very good in the meetings and in the pitch part of things can be a huge advantage in terms of a salary bump, in terms of recognition, and in terms of the value that you get to add to the team. You've got to be more than a pair of hands, and your presentation skills could definitely be a way to do it. One of the reasons that I didn't stick with the advertising part of my career, even when I became a freelancer and I was still doing that stuff and everything like that, ultimately I moved away a lot from that from a career perspective for me, is because I just personally didn't feel enough of a sense of ownership over anything. And as a creative, that could be a real challenge. That could be very difficult. And it's often why a lot of people do decide ultimately to freelance and grow their own way, because they want that sense of ownership. They want the thing that they work so hard on to be something that they feel a sense of responsibility over, and that they can, it's not about the vanity of taking credit for something, it's about knowing that you controlled the process and the experience of working on it and how it was presented. When you work for somebody else, a lot of your creative control goes out the window. And that's not something that everybody can live with, and it's something that even now I still, in working with clients or even with sponsors from the YouTube side and everything like that, creative control is something that I fight for all the time. And I personally just learned that sometimes I can leave money on the table in exchange for more creative control. And if someone wants to take creative control from me, the price is going to be very high. I make people bleed when it comes to taking away my creative control. But that's just how I roll. That's just what I'm about, though. So if you're thinking about becoming someone who works at an ad agency, whether you're going to be a graphic designer, whether you want to be an art director, a production artist, you want to do anything creative working at the agency level, part of my advice would be make sure you have an understanding of what the agency is looking for, who their clients are, and definitely make sure you understand the culture of the agency and the type of work that you want to do. Make sure that it's in alignment. So if you want to work with certain types of clients and you want to do certain stuff, then really do your homework more than anything. From an internal politics standpoint, I would say just trying to find something to like about everybody is going to be the only way you survive in any job. There's a reason that I'm a creative entrepreneur. Sometimes I just get impatient or tired of having to fight so hard to look for the good in people. That can be problematic depending on your personality. So again, just depending on your personality, you got to make sure that you find a work culture and people that are a good fit for you, and make sure that the kind of work you want to do aligns with what the agency is doing. That's going to be very important. From a salary standpoint, expectations. I would say that in general, if you're going to be an agency designer, it will be entirely dependent on where you are working in the country, in the world, and it will vary. But I have this idea in my mind where if you're going to be a full-time designer for an agency, and they're not like a small boutique agency, that you shouldn't be expecting less than maybe around the ballpark of $50,000, depending on your level of experience. And again, like I said, it's dependent on your level of experience, but also understand that that could shift just depending on what the economy is doing, and also what the talent pool for candidates looks like, and what skills you bring to the table. And just bear in mind that full-time positions as a whole, even creatively, are going away in favor of freelancing. So take these numbers with a grain of salt. it's not impossible for you to negotiate a higher salary. And again, it might depend on where you live. I've known people to start at 65,000, but that's more New York, LA, metro areas. There are people for art director positions that I've known to get 70, but that really comes down to how you negotiate, where you live, what the market's doing, what you bring to the table. There are just too many variables for me to give you straight up numbers. I know a lot of you would feel more comfortable with straight up numbers, but there aren't any that are reliable, and that's just honest. This is where talking to somebody who's worked at the place that you're wanting to work really would come in handy. If you just ask them and you trust them to be honest with you about how much they were making, what you should ask for, what you should get, then I think that that's fine. There are some situations where, depending on what you're going to do, and if it's a small enough agency, where you might be able to do a rev share. You might be able to do a rev share, and some people, it's referred to as profit sharing, where you might take a lesser upfront salary, but if you contribute to the bigger projects, you might get a cut. This is where stuff like being part of the pitch team can actually help you, and you could get either a salary bump or you could get a cut of the deal if you're helping close the deal. But this really just depends on who you're working with and what the situation is and how comfortable you are negotiating those kinds of things. From a project management and stress standpoint, what I would say is always find something to work on and put yourself in a position to work ahead. Even if there's not a deadline or a project or something like that, making presets, making templates, sharpening your skills, refining your process, getting faster, all of those things are just going to make your life easier. You're going to have less anxiety. You're going to feel much more in control. Doing mock-ups and concepts for the type of work needs to get done means that later you're just, rearranging certain things, or you're not experimenting. You've explored and done some concepts and mock-ups. I mean, those things just are so helpful to do every day, day in and day out, even though it might feel like busy work, because when you're under the gun and something comes through last minute and you've got to get 3 concepts out in the next 2 hours, you won't feel so overwhelmed, because that's real and that's happened to me. So I would say just try and do as much as you can there. It could be really important. Some final thoughts. Agency life isn't for everybody, but I think that it'd be great for you as a designer in your career, as a creative in your career, to do it for 6 months to a year if you ever get the opportunity, so that you have an understanding of the industry. I learned much more about the industry, and I think it set me up for success in my own business as a result, learning the ins and outs, working under a self-made businessman and entrepreneur in the creative services industry. That really, I think, informed a lot of my decisions, both about what to do as a boss and a business owner, what not to do. And I love that throughout my career, I've worked for so many different entrepreneurs in the corporate side, and then also as a freelancer and as a consultant. And what it has given me is a tremendous amount of respect and empathy for what it actually takes. Working the client services side gives me empathy for what the clients go through. Working in-house and then having to negotiate with agencies both before and after the fact of having agency experience, I learned a lot there, and I learned to actually advocate for the company better as a result of knowing how agencies work internally. Made me much better as an in-house person when we had to work with agencies on things. So I'd say having a very diverse experience in your career, working in-house, working at agency, working as a freelancer, and going back and forth could have tremendous value to you and to future employers, just because you'll know how everybody is thinking because you sat in their chair. There's something to be said for being able to see all the angles from a position of experience. And I think that's one of the key things that I think overall throughout my life has made me so successful, where other people have gotten very, very narrow niche, and it's still not terrible advice to niche down. I really owe a lot of my success to the empathy I gained for everybody else, having walked a mile in their shoes. And creatively, I would say that that could be a very valuable asset and experience. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is shot on my Sony RX100 Mark V. It is the new vlogging style camera. I will be back to my traditional setup after I travel, but when I'm on the go, I'm going to try not to miss updates by using, different gear and things that I think just are a lot more helpful. So if you guys like this style of video, and if you guys like hearing war stories about my experiences in the industry, let me know in the comment section so I know what to do about that. Anyway, like this video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out the other awesome stuff on the channel. Remember, graphic design videos are usually on Mondays, even when I'm on the go. As always, you guys, thanks so much for watching, and don't forget, create something awesome today. Hopefully, working for someone who doesn't suck.